Well, my name is Mark Crutcher.
And my name is Renee Hobbs. Thank you for joining us.
This is our first show, and in this new project that we're starting, we're hoping to bring you a show every day. Sometimes we may not be able to do that. Sometimes we may bring you 2 shows a day. Depends on what's happening in the pro-life movement.
Right.
But we want to keep you up with whatever's happening right now. Right,
That's
Renee?
right.
A lot of things are going on right now in the pro-life movement. First thing I want to talk about is this deal of Trump being beat up on because he criticized this judge in this immigration hearing. Now, it doesn't matter what side of the immigration thing you come down on. But where did this idea come from, Renee, that judges are above reproach? You're not to criticize them. You can criticize the President of the United States. You can call him names. You can protest him. You can do anything. Congressmen, state representatives, anybody.
Right.
Anybody's fair game. Except for some reason when we get to these judges now, what I call the godless left in this country thinks they're sacrosanct. They can't be touched. You can't say anything negative. If you say something negative about them, it's like you said something negative about Jesus or something.
Yeah, right.
You know.
Yeah.
Do you know where that came from? Because I have no clue.
I couldn't tell you.
I cannot tell you either. You got to remember something. Or in my opinion anyway, you tell me what you think. If one day this country collapses and somebody writes the history of what happened to it, how did America collapse? I think it'll be because of 2 factors. The media and judges.
Right.
Federal judges are destroying this country.
They are, and that's not their job to do that either.
No, it's not their job to do. They have gone way over the pail here. And in this particular case, if you read the federal law on what a president can and cannot do regarding immigration, he has absolute 100% authority. Read the law. You could read that to a 10-year-old.
And they would understand it.
They would understand it. They know exactly what you're talking about. And yet these judges issue this big ruling and never mention the federal law. Never mention the law on this.
Yeah, well, it's purposely done. They don't want to.
And, you know, I think about this is like Roe versus Wade. You cannot read the U.S. Constitution and even in any sense, shape, form, or fashion come up with a constitutional justification for legalized abortion. It doesn't exist.
No, it doesn't.
In fact, there's a prohibition against it because it says all persons are protected and the unborn are persons.
Right.
That's not a theory. You cannot come up with a definition for a human being that's not a person. And no one can deny that they're human beings.
Right.
They're persons.
Right.
They're protected by the Constitution. And yet we had 7 unelected judges. There's 9 on the court, and there's a 7-2 ruling. 7 unelected judges answerable to no one made this up out of whole cloth. Even a lot of liberal people that study the Constitution, professors and so forth, agree that even ones that say that abortion ought to be legal, they say Roe versus Wade was poorly decided.
Yeah, right. And the person that Norma McCorvey is even still trying to overturn that herself. She was lied to, and right.
She was the plaintiff and thing, and you know she told you and me one day when we met with her, I was lied to. These people told me this, and this was what was true.
Right.
And she's worked, like you said, she's worked to get rid of it. The thing that I think people need to think about when they think about this issue of judges is we say that we live in a country that's not a theocracy, that we were rebelling against the British to have freedom of religion. Well, secular humanism is a religion. And these people push secular humanism. They sometimes in some of their decisions they've even said that. That this is a country of secular humanists. That's a religion. So the fact is, they can say we don't want to live in a theocracy all they want to, but we do live in a theocracy.
Right. As long as they can push God out of it and keep pushing God out of it.
Right. And make man the ultimate authority.
Right.
Which is what they've done.
Right.
And but I think that these judges, and I would certainly put Blackmun in this that wrote Roe versus Wade, the Roe versus Wade decision. He wrote the language in it. These people see themselves as the priests of secular humanism.
That's a good analogy.
That's exactly what they see themselves as. And that's the country we live in right now. And the question becomes, when is the Christian community going to stand up against this? Well, and I don't know.
They may be, just as it was said on Live Talk a couple of years ago. Maybe the Christians are standing up.
Right. It's just the Christian community is much smaller than what we think it is.
Right.
Right.
And it continues to get smaller and smaller.
Right.
Well, you had said something about the media just a little bit ago. I'd like to bring up the protesters over the weekend.
Yes.
That was a...
It's not just over the weekend. It's ever since Trump's been elected.
Yeah, that's
right?
True.
And it's interesting because the media is the good barometer on this. They want you to think. Well, I think what you're referring to is the pro-life protest at the Planned Parenthoods around the country.
Right, on Saturday.
And the way the media covered it.
Right.
And they're coming out here saying pro-lifers protest funding of Planned Parenthood, but and almost everything that you saw reported, they said their numbers were dwarfed.
Right.
That was the word that was common.
Right.
Were dwarfed by the number of pro-Planned Parenthood.
Yeah, the counter-protesters, they were there and they were much larger and
they
had
claim.
More of an impact.
That's what they claim.
It's not true.
Now, whether it was true or not,
right,
I don't know. But I'm going to tell you this. To suggest that those counter-protesters, if that's what you want to call them, these pro-abortion, pro-Planned Parenthood protesters, that this was some sort of spontaneous uprising.
Right.
Is nonsense.
And this goes back to 2013 with Wendy Davis and the filibuster and how
on HB2
and how they paid people to travel to Austin,
Texas,
to filibuster that.
We saw that. Yeah, you're right. That's a good example of it. HB2, House Bill 2 in Austin was being debated. She did the filibuster because she wanted to run for governor, and so she does this filibuster, and all the media covered was the number of spontaneous people that just showed up protesting.
Right.
But then when an investigation was done, like you were saying, it found out that most of these people were being paid. Most of them weren't even from Texas.
I know. They were flown in from all over.
And bussed in from Illinois.
Right.
There were buses there from Illinois.
Right.
They were getting homeless people off the streets. They were getting people out of shelters.
Yep.
They were just paying these people. I don't remember. Do you remember what they were paying them? It's like $70 a day.
It was quite a bit of money, but I can't.
It's something like $70 a day they were paying them to come in here and protest. All of these things that you've seen since the day that Trump was elected, all the violence that you've seen, all the burning, all these things at college campuses, on the street corners and so forth, anybody who thinks that those were spontaneous, that people just rose up, is nutty.
Right.
Is completely nuts.
Yeah.
This is well organized,
very
well financed. There's been some documentation out there that George Soros and people like him.
I know. I was going to say, look at the money behind the pro-abortion and the godless left, as you would say. Anyways, a lot of money. They're pouring billions into this, and these Black Lives Matter things. All of a sudden, I mean, Black Lives Matter, supposedly this grassroots, spontaneous uprising, and then all of a sudden they have millions of dollars in the bank. Where does this come from? Right? I wonder.
I wonder who.
Right.
This is very, very well organized.
Yeah.
And the reason this is important from our standpoint, first off, when you see all these various media reports where they use the exact same language to describe these protests this weekend, or the counter-protest, you know they're reading off the same script.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Somebody has furnished that.
It was an email that was just reprinted and resent.
Right.
Yeah.
Somebody sent that around. But you know, you've heard me say many times, Renee, during your years on Life Talk and some of the things I've read, that I've written, that the closer the pro-life movement gets to victory, the more vicious the other side is going to become.
Right.
And we're seeing that.
Right.
And I'm telling you, pro-lifers need to sit down, and I've had this conversation with you already. We all need to sit down and ask ourselves, if this thing gets really nasty, how far am I willing to go? How far am I willing to go to defend the unborn?
Well, hopefully you're willing to go
as far as
your
it takes. Commitment,
to the pro-life movement, to the babies.
Right. Because I'm going to tell you, if you look at what's been going on over the immigration and all the other issues that have been brought up that these godless leftists are rioting over, that's but a bitter foretaste of what's going to happen when we get to the point where we're actually making legitimate progress in the pro-life movement. These people will go berserk, and it will be dangerous. It'll be nasty. It'll be vicious, and pro-life people need to be deciding right now, how committed are you to the unborn child?
Well, I mean, it's biblical anyways,
Right.
because the closer we get to the end times, it gets nastier and meaner and
Right.
more distasteful. So,
And that's where we are.
That's where we are.
And people better look at this stuff, because I'm going to tell you what's happened here. Again, my terminology, the godless left got their man 8 years ago. You had a completely godless, Marxist, moral defective in Barack Obama. They got their guy.
Right.
He did everything they could have possibly asked for him to do.
That's right.
And they thought they had a successor to him in Hillary Clinton.
Right.
And she would have been every bit as godless and every bit as morally bankrupt as him.
Right.
Maybe more so. Who knows? It'd been pretty hard to do, but he set a pretty high standard there for that sort of thing. They never anticipated that they could possibly lose.
No, they didn't.
And this is something they could not stomach.
Right.
Because now
they still can't stomach.
They still can't stomach it. And so we're in for 4 years of this. Don't think these people are going to go away.
Right.
But if you think that this is bad so far, just wait till you see what happens when we get close to ending abortion. So I think pro-lifers, again, like I said earlier, and I've already had this conversation with you, if you're going to walk away when times get tough, then walk away now. So we know who we've got on our side and who we don't have.
We need the strong ones to stand with us.
I'd rather go into battle with 10 committed people than 100 people that I don't know if I can trust or not.
That have no loyalty.
Right.
Yeah.
That have no loyalty and no sense of I'll stick it out no matter what happens.
Yeah.
Right.
That's right.
Because again, what you've seen since Donald Trump's been elected is nothing compared to what would happen if there was a complete protection of the unborn child proposed and it looked like it might pass. These people are nasty and they're vicious, and their mindset is you use violence to solve problems.
Right.
You solve the problem that's in front of you.
Right.
You don't think about the long-term consequences. You don't think about anything that's around it. You solve the problem that's in front of you, and if that means violence, that means violence.
Right.
And that's their mindset. That's the pro-abortion mindset, pro-choice mindset. Don't think that they won't carry that forward, because they will.
Yep, I agree.
We do. Well, good. Thanks. That's all the time we have for this particular show. I want to remind you of one thing. You know, I know everybody is going after you for donations and so forth, but this battle is getting really hot and heavy. And we can't do anything at Life Dynamics. If you get letters from me or you read the stuff that I write, you know I've said this since day one. For 35 years I've been saying this. We can't do anything without your support. We don't get millions of dollars a day from the federal government. We have to fight against people who get millions of dollars a day and who have people like George Soros on their side who dump hundreds of millions of dollars a year into their bank accounts. We have to go up against them. And the only thing we've got going for us financially is you. So I want to again ask you to please support Life Dynamics, and we'll be making that a little bit easier in future shows, because you're going to be able to donate right here on Facebook Live. And we're also going to be expanding here in the next few shows to YouTube Live. YouTube also has a live station, and we'll be expanding into that. So just be looking for that, and we'll, anything that we can do to help you in your pro-life effort, we would appreciate the time to do so.
And if you have any issues, questions, or comments that you'd like to send in to us, you can call me at 940-380-8800 or email me at renee@prolifeamerica.com, or find me on Facebook. I'm on Facebook as well.
Thanks. Until next time, remember, Life Dynamics is not here to put up a good fight. We're here to win, because winning is how the killing stops. Hello, welcome to Life Talk Now. I'm Mark Crutcher.
And I'm Renee Hobbs. Thank you for joining us.
Well, Renee, this is a sad day.
It is.
Sad show we have to do here. Norma McCorvey passed away.
She did.
For people who may not be aware of who she is, she was the Jane Roe in Roe versus Wade, and later became pro-life, turned her life around, and saw what she had been a part of.
Right.
And you know, I met her many times. She was here on Life Talk a few times in the past, and I had a pretty long relationship with her since right after she came over to the pro-life side. But you only met her once.
I did, yeah. We went and picked her up and took her out to eat, and had a short little visit with her.
Yeah, we spent probably a couple hours.
We did.
Yeah, visiting with her because I wanted you to meet her. And you know, it's kind of a. I've been surprised over the last couple of days since this happened of how much it's kind of bothered me, and it's like anyone else. I mean, you lose somebody, you know, that you know and that you've had a relationship with. It's always going to bother you. But I think one of the things that affects me is that, and Norma had told me this before, and she'd told other people that had interviewed her, and she kind of hit on it when you and I were talking with her. She knew that God had forgiven her for her role, but she had never forgiven herself. Yeah. And I think she died. I haven't talked to her in some time. Well, the last time I talked to her was when you and I went and visited with her, and that was a year or so ago. But my suspicion is that she died having never forgiven herself.
Right. Well, I mean, I can only imagine how hard that had to have been to live with the fact that something you were a part of has killed over 60 million babies.
Right.
So, and to forgive herself for that would probably have been extremely hard. But
well, it's like all these women that you and I talk to who've had an abortion, and I mean, what percentage of these women will say that? They'll tell us. I mean, I'd say it's well over half of them.
Oh yeah.
Will say, I know God has forgiven me. When we start talking about the issue of their spiritual life and whatever kind of relationship they have with Christ or whatever, and then we'll talk about this issue of forgiveness. And they'll all tell you. They'll say, I know God's forgiven me. I just can't forgive myself.
Yeah. I think it's human nature for us to do that, though. I think when something that impactful has happened in our lives, it's really hard to forgive, but only by God's grace and mercy on us.
And you know, I guess the good news is, I don't guess, I know, the good news is that if that's true, that she died without ever forgiving herself, at least now, she's living with the peace that she never got here.
That's right.
You know?
Yeah.
And, you know, she was, when anytime you would sit and talk with Norma for any length of time, you would see that she was a very conflicted person. And, you know, she obviously became very staunchly pro-life. And but she recognized that she had been used by
Linda Coffey and Sarah Weddington.
Linda Coffey and Sarah Weddington. You know, and I've always said, I don't know why these two women haven't been disbarred, because as you remember when we talked to Norma here in Dallas when we took her out to eat, she says Coffey and Weddington both knew that she was lying about having been raped. So they sent a case to the Supreme Court that they knew was based on a fraud.
Right. Yeah.
And they knew that.
Right. Well, and Norma was their guinea pig, and if it wasn't Norma, it was going to be somebody else.
It's going to be somebody else. But you know, Norma told us Norma knew what she was and who she was and so forth. She was very comfortable. I mean, she said, I was a street kid. Most people may not know this. She was literally homeless. I mean, she was living in Lee Park in Dallas. She told us where she lived in Lee Park. She said, I can take you down there and show you the stand of trees that I lived under.
Yeah, yeah. She kind of went into detail about her younger life with us.
Right. And she said she was a ready-made victim for these two. Here you had two ambitious, educated, well-to-do women who were looking for someone, and Norma said they were looking for someone just like me.
Yeah, somebody that they could intimidate and
manipulate
and pour their power over her and make her do whatever she wanted.
And that's what they did. And so you had these two, what I would call savages, that were trying to make abortion legal so they could see as many babies killed as possible.
Right.
And they had to have a particular kind of person that they could control, and that's what they had. And you know, and Norma made the point too to us when we visited with her, that the second that this thing was over, they had no more use for her. And she said they were actually embarrassed of her. They didn't want to be seen with her in public because they were educated and they were in the, the brie, cheese, and wine crowd, the upper crust, ultra-left, liberal, Illuminati, so to speak. And she was this street girl from Dallas, she called a street kid, and she wasn't educated and she wasn't very smart. And and Norma told us, she said they were embarrassed of me. She said I could see that when we'd go someplace, they would just kind of push me off into the back. Oh, that's Norma McCorvey over there. Now you go away, and now we can talk with our with our upper crust friends.
Right.
And she felt a little insecure, or not, I don't know if insecure is the right word, but she felt beneath them, like they were looking down their noses at her.
Right.
And it's interesting to note too that the second that she turned and became pro-life, they started attacking her. And they started saying things like that, well, that she was uneducated and easily controlled, and so the pro-lifers got a hold of her and they turned her around and they did this and they did that. But before, that's not what they were saying about her.
Right.
They only said those things about her once she became pro-life.
Well, Norma wanted something bigger than what had happened, and she wanted to turn it around. And
she did.
She did.
And
she did what she could.
One thing I told Norma one time in a phone conversation that I had with her, she was talking about all the babies that were dead because of what she'd done. And I said, well, yeah, but Norma, there's a lot of babies that are alive because of what you've done too.
Right.
And don't just look at the negative, and but you and I can't identify with that.
No, not
it's
at
easy
all.
for us to say, well, accept Christ's forgiveness and go on about your life, and but we didn't have that experience.
Right.
And I just hope that I know in my heart that she's got the peace now that she never had here.
Right.
And
that's good.
She's not being manipulated and controlled and for somebody else's agenda, like she was when she was here, and she felt real guilty about it. But, and she's in a better place.
That's right. She sure is.
Thanks, Renee. That's all the time we have for today's show. But remember, Life Dynamics is not here to put up a good fight. We're here to win, because winning is how the killing stops.
Could the sign of the third abomination have appeared in America, where in the last days of Israel, the image of the gods are all over the land? Could it actually have manifested? What happens if you see it? I'm going to tell you show you something in a moment. There is another tower that represented America's glory for most of the 20th century, America rising. It's the Empire State Building. That was the tallest building on earth for 40 years. On the day when marriage was struck down, they also lit up the Empire State Building, once the symbol of America and its glory. But soon after that, 1 month later, something else happened to the Empire State Building. And I want you to see it, if you haven't.
Whoa.
What is that? That is the abomination. That is a foreign god. Oh. That is an image of a foreign god, undoubtedly the largest image of a foreign god ever on planet Earth. The face is the length of the building. Basically, what god is it? That is the god Kali. What is Kali? Kali is the god of darkness. This is darkness.
Now, wait a minute. How did this happen? I mean,
They lit it up. They were doing something, celebrating the world and creation, and they said something that they're appointing Kali to be the defender of the world.
Oh, look at that.
This is over New York City. Now, in the last days of Israel, the foreign gods appear. Here is a foreign god, god of darkness. Now, think about this. They made this image by projecting thousands of lumens of light to make an image of Kali, the god of darkness. They use light for darkness. God says, woe to those who put light for darkness. There it is.
Oh my goodness, Rabbi. How come I haven't seen this, Sasha? You usually show me everything.
Well,
oh my goodness.
Maybe the Lord saved it so I could do it.
That's so good.
Rabbi, this Jesus statue is here in the street here, and some people don't like anything that's replica of Christ or anything, but I do, because I love Jesus, so it just reminds me of Jesus.
Yeah.
But I look at that statue of Jesus. Could you take a look back there? Do you have a camera?
Because, see, we sit up here and we get to see
everybody turn around and look at that. What if that was on the the building.
There'd be an uproar.
What if that? Can you imagine Jesus?
Oh.
How many stories?
Good, evil.
High.
There would be an
Saved by Wonder.
Uproar.
It's probably 200 stories or something almost, isn't it? What if, just picture Jesus on that building. Wouldn't that have made you thrilled?
Yes.
But that would have been illegal. That would have offended people, and they would have gone to court. But instead,
yes,
you're shocking the daylights out of us, Rabbi.
Well, and think about this. You said that, and they say, well, that's Christianity, that's religion, we can't, and yet this is Hinduism, no problem, no problem. What happened in the last days of Israel? They basically made God illegal. They were persecuting the people of God and the mention of God, and they lifted up the gods, Baal, and this. Well, this is literally a foreign god, and not only that, well, let me say something else. You said, what if they did it? In the 1950s, I have a picture, I should have brought it, but in the 1950s, you see 3 skyscrapers in New York around Easter time, all lit up with a sign of the cross. In the 1950s America.
Really?
You lit up with this 3 crosses over New York City. You would not have that today.
Oh.
And now look what you have today. Woe to those who turn away from God. And Kali, not only is he the god of the darkness, Kali is the god of death. The Bible says the wages of sin is death. God says, you turn from me, you made a covenant with death. And Kali is the god of destruction. You heard the tongue, if you can put that up one more, you'll see, if you look at the face, you'll see the tongue is sticking out.
Oh,
why?
My goodness.
Because she's dripping with blood. Because she's in a frenzy of destruction. So here you have the image of destruction, the god of destruction over New York City. The third abomination. This is what happens when a nation turns away from God. All three manifested in America.
It's the image of destruction over New York City?
Yes. Yes.
I wouldn't do that if I lived in New York City, because I think I want to repent. I want to say, oh, God, forgive us.
That shows you the irony, because they put it up saying she's going to be our defender, our protector.
He's got the whole world in his hands. 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 He's got the whole